Thank you for joining us for this special Memorial Day episode of the Rooster Teeth Podcast, or if you're living in another country, as it's known there, Monday. We have a new show that is debuting this Thursday from our broadcast department called Murder Room, and we wanted to give you a special sneak peek to check it out before the podcast here today. So here's your first look at Murder Room debuting on Thursday.
It is the near future, and the justice system as you know it is no more. No courtrooms, no attorneys. Aided only by an interactive crime-solving network, a human counsel will have just 30 minutes to examine a murder case, then hand an immediate death sentence to one of 3 suspects. Either justice will prevail, or an innocent person pays the price. Hello, I am Jessica. Welcome to Rooster Teeth's Murder Room.
Hey everybody, welcome to this very special, totally not pre-recorded episode.
Absolutely not pre-recorded.
Of Memorial Day edition of the RT podcast, brought to you today by I have 2 very special guests here with me today. I have Mr. Brian Brushwood
Hey,
of Scam School and Modern Rogue.
No, you said them both. Thank you. That's all I wanted. It's like, say them both. Say them both.
We'll talk about it in a second, but I want to talk about, because Scam School being such a huge entity and then pivoting and doing something entirely new is, as you know, our other guest here, C. Robert Cargill.
We know each other very well, actually.
Yeah. I might have been the one to. So on Twitter, Scott Derrickson said something, and I responded to him. And Scott was like, I don't know who you are, but you seem to be followed by a lot of people. I guess I'll follow you. And I was like, well, if it helps, I think I'm responsible for getting Cargill to quit his day job. And which eventually led to
What was
him.
the day job, Cargill?
Oh, I was a film critic, or before I was a professional film critic, I was a video store clerk.
Really?
In fact, back in the day, there's a number of articles that I've written that, we're going to talk about this a little later. But there's a lot of articles that I wrote about, I was on the set of this film, and I was at this junket, and I was at this bar and chatting with so-and-so actor, and everybody thought that's literally what I was doing for a living. And then I would go back home and I would fly back to Austin and work at a video store. And so for years, I would tell these stories at the video store. Like, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, well, I was in LA and I visited the set of this movie, Rules of Attraction, I was shooting. And of
course, everybody just thinks you're a liar.
They thought I was full of shit. In fact, that was the thing, is for years, like,
You were delusional.
They thought I was, they're like, yeah, whatever, Cargill. Yeah. And then I walked, like a couple years in, I walked up on one of the employees training a newbie and saying, okay, so look, there's this guy here, his name's Cargill, and he's gonna, at some point you're gonna work with him and he's gonna tell you some crazy story about some celebrity that he knows and about being out on some adventure, and just believe him, because it turns out he hasn't actually lied to us yet. It was a very strange time. I spent 5 years as a critic while also working in video stores.
And now, author,
Yep.
writer of Sea of Rust, author of the movie, or screenwriter for Sinister. And then also, probably your best known work is you wrote the Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah, Marvel's Doctor Strange.
Which I got to talk about the path from going, because I remember how I first met you. Cargill and I have such a weird story. Both you gentlemen are from Austin, which is another reason. And 2 gentlemen that I know from Austin I've known you for a really long time, Brian.
Yep.
And Cargill, we have a really unique situation where I actually had this with my girlfriend Ashley. This is gonna make it sound weird, but
oh no, let's get weird. We're on YouTube.
But Cargill and I have this overlapping Venn diagram of friends that's enormous, but we had never met each other before. Not quite. I don't know if I've ever told you this before. Back in your film review days, you were actually the very first person to ever review one of my movies.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The first movie I made in college with Matt was a movie called The Schedule. I'm curious if you even remember.
I do.
And
I do.
reviewed it for Ain't It Cool News. You were the independent at that point in time, the independent film reviewer.
Well, I did what we called indie, which was that was the first gig I got on. Was for the first year. What I did was literally Harry Knowles was literally one of the most powerful people in Hollywood at that time, and he could make or break things right away. He saved 2 movies from going direct to video just by reviewing them, and the studio changed their mind and said, maybe we'll put this Pitch Black movie and this Iron Giant movie out in theaters anyway.
And give credit where credit is due. Harry Knowles, I consider him to be the first successful blogger.
Yeah.
Going way back to the old days of the internet. I mean, I used to go to the Ain't It Cool News website when it was a gray background and a rainbow divider, you know, and I think that was like 1994?
96.
96? Okay.
96 is when they started.
Yeah, and that was way ahead of the curve that he was doing this. It was just some like hardcore movie geek in Austin who was writing, and he got a lot of attention, and through that got a lot of influence.
And so what would happen is a bunch of filmmakers who had made films but couldn't get them picked up, couldn't get them into festivals, what have you, would just send them to Harry. And Harry would get, you know, boxes of this stuff every day. And so I was essentially the clearinghouse for that. He would just call me up and be, Cargill, come over, I've got another box for you. And I would just pick through all these VHSs and DVDs of these homemade films sometimes homemade, shot in backyards, sometimes films with real budgets that just couldn't get noticed. And his rule was only talk about the stuff you like. Like, this is not about destroying anyone's career. This is about finding these oddball things and
The diamonds in the rough.
The diamonds in the rough that everyone else is neglecting. And as a result, I got a bunch of people into film festivals. I kickstarted a couple of careers. There's two particular filmmakers who were both about to give up when I wrote about their film. And
can you say who they are?
yeah, well, one of them I'm working with now. He's a producer named Daniel Noah. He worked as a screenwriter for a while, and now he's a producer with Elijah Wood over at SpectreVision. And he's producing a film of mine. But so he actually had one of those things where he had made this film called 12. Nobody cared about it, couldn't get anybody to pay attention. He had pretty much given up, and all of a sudden his phone starts ringing one morning. And it's ringing off the hook, and he finally just crawls out of bed and answers the phone, and he's like, hello, and it's someone from CAA. And says, hey, I'm looking for Daniel Noah. And he's like, well, this is me. And he's like, well, we would like to schedule a meeting to see 12 and talk to you about representation. And he's like, wait, how did you hear about 12? And he goes, well, we read about it on Ain't It Cool News. Didn't you know? And he's like, it's on Ain't It Cool News? And he's like, oh, so we're the first people to get to you. So from that point on, you know, he got.
You can almost hear the salivation.
And nobody ended up picking up the movie, but people saw the movie, saw his talent, and said, we're gonna represent this guy. Started getting him gigs. He started doing script work and rewrite work, and then he found out that he really loved producing. And so he became friends with Elijah Wood, and they started a production company together, and they've been producing films and helping distribute films. And
so around the same time that this happened, and this is why all of Austin is one big Venn diagram.
Yes.
And it's the weirdest thing, because you hear about, like, you know, in the 1960s, there was a scene around whatever, and you're like, that's movie talk. That's not how it happens. But I'll be damned if that's not exactly what happened in Austin, because while this was going on, I was performing, the Asylum Street Spankers would do an all-acoustic blues and jazz show, and then they would take a 15-minute break, and I would get up and escape from a straitjacket, eat fire, do stick nails in my eyes, and then I would pass the hat. And it was during that time I was walking around and passing the hat, and I looked, I was like, holy shit, that's Harry Knowles. And then it was there that they were also doing slam poetry that I met and connected with Ernie Klein and became friends with him. Ernie Klein, of course, wrote Ready Player One. And between then and there, I guess around the early Scam School days, I mean, obviously I've been aware of all of Rooster Teeth's stuff, but I feel like you and I only started hanging out like, what, 5 years ago?
Yeah, it seems like it, yeah. But it's one of those things, too. It's sometimes you can operate even in a small town like Austin, although I just read that Austin is now the 11th largest city in the nation. That's crazy to me. Yeah. Although we were complaining how long it took us to get across town in traffic to get here.
Well, it was, but only because they're doing construction. I live 5 minutes from the studio, and it took me 20 minutes to get here.
No, dude, that fucking roundabout on 51st Street, and nobody knows how to use a roundabout. They're all waiting for like 4 car links to appear so they can get their car in there. It's like, just go. You're pointed in that direction already. Just find a gap and go.
It's actually an article we just did on themonarogue.com is nice things America can't have because we can't handle it.
Yeah.
It's funny what you were just talking about, though. I met Ernie Klein doing slam poetry. Like I performed this terrible piece, and it was so deep nerd for like 1997, and there's only one person in this big audience laughing at it, and that guy comes up afterwards and pats me on the back and goes, they just didn't get it, man, but you did a good job. And then he goes on stage, and it's Ernie Klein, fucking blows me off the stage. Like Ernie was the fucking man back in the late 90s, early aughts when it came to slam poetry.
Yeah, his album Ultraman is Airwolf. Like I remember the one piece about how the Millennium Falcon is just the Dukes of Hazzard. Like the passion with which he would argue geek stuff way before the internet. You know, when there just weren't there was no YouTube to let these rants out.
There weren't memes did not get passed around. Like at that point, the biggest meme on the internet was that video of the whale exploding. Like that was the one thing we all passed
From the 1970s.
Yeah.
Like, but that's the one thing we all emailed to each other. But yeah, it's
That and the South Park Christmas card.
Yeah.
Jesus versus Santa one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. I don't think of those guys as being internet guys, but definitely most people found out about South Park via this little postage stamp size
Well,
little video.
and of course, that's the whole
Socksmith.
launching of this entire platform is like that word of mouth, that easy forwarding stuff around.
yeah. But yeah, so but Austin was really it really is that whole Venn diagram thing, because we all were all at the same parties, we all knew each other. Hell, when we met on an airplane.
We went on an airplane.
In fact, it was a funny bookend. I was going to mention this. So I went out to L.A. for the premiere of Doctor Strange, and the first night I'm out there, I'm on a friend of mine had me over to have me on his podcast, my buddy Joseph Scrimshaw. And I was like, we're going to go to dinner, and we go to walk. And I'm like, I thought they didn't walk in LA. He goes, literally around the corner. And I'm like, all right. And then we walk like 20 feet, turn the corner, and we're at this really great restaurant because he just literally practically lives on top of it. And then I get up to go to the bar, and I'm standing next to Max Landis, and we have a lot of friends in common. So I literally go, hey, Max, we don't know each other, but we have a lot of friends in common. And he goes, well, I'm Max. I go, I'm Cargill. He goes, oh, Robert C. Cargill. And I said, well, actually, C. Robert Cargill. But yeah, he goes, oh, hey, yeah, you've been sharing love online. Like, hey. And so we ended up chatting. And so that's how I got to meet Max Landis. And so that's the first day. The last day, I get on a plane, I sit down, and I feel this tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and you're sitting there, and you go, excuse me, we don't know each other, but we have a lot of friends in common. You're Robert C. Cargill, aren't you? And I said, well,
Did I do that?
yeah. And I said, well, C. Robert Cargill, but yeah. And he goes, I'm Bernie. And I'm like, of course you are. We have all the same friends, and we've just never been in the same room together. And so, but yeah, so that was the bookend of my big LA trip was two different people who I share a lot of the same friends with calling me Robert C. Cargill.
Well, in my defense, in the modern era of knowing you, I've always called you just Cargill.
Yeah, because that's what everyone calls me.
And also, we all go back to the old school internet days when everyone had a fake name.
Yeah.
Like Mazaworm, which I still don't.
Mazaworm,
What is Mazaworm?
Oh man.
No. It was literally just a name some roommates gave me. I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 7 other guys. And, like, this is early Austin. Like, this is.
It was probably only like $300 a month rent total.
It was $525 right over on Lamar across from Threadgills.
It's now $1 million a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was literally, and everybody had the dumbest names, and the worm part just came from. We played a lot of World of Darkness role-playing games, and I would always play a thing called a foam war, which are essentially these worm-tainted creatures, and it was just my favorite part of that universe. And so it ended up just one drunken night turning into some stupid name, and then literally my buddy, one of the guys who lived there, made me my first email address, and he just Massaworm at netzero.com.
Netzero.
Free internet forever. Remember that?
Of course, yeah.
Forever.
You had to-
For 3 years. So
But you had to run a program where it would show you ads in a bar at the bottom of your screen while you were on the internet the entire time.
And then they had that 5x the speed over dial-up because it would just pre-cache every website it thought you were about to start clicking over to.
The beauty of NetZero actually was if you actually unplugged your telephone for a second and then plugged it back in, that little thing would have that little bar would have a freak out and would not reconnect after, so you wouldn't get any more ads, and it would save your bandwidth.
What Bernie?
How broke do you have to be to figure that out? You know what I mean? It's I don't even want to see the ads. I just got to unplug this thing and plug it back in.
But I ended up emailing Harry Knowles my first review with that account, and I hadn't made a name, so he's like, "Oh, well, you're Massaworm now."
Massaworm,
and a year in, I realized, wow, I really should have picked my own name because this is stuck.
Only Harry gets to use his own name. That's it.
That is correct.
What was your first screen name?
So my first one, when we started Rooster Teeth, I posted under the name Busby, but that actually came from that was fairly recent addition. I used that for the site that Jeff and Gus and I worked on together called Drunk Gamers. I wrote under the name Busby on that. That was my handle. That's what everyone had a handle.
Yeah, because CB. Man, did you guys ever have CB radios back?
Oh,
in the
so
day?
how old do you want to make this podcast? I never did CB radios, but I did go on BBSs and a lot of BBSs here in Austin, just before the internet took off. And on those days, and that was the handle I used forever, was the handle Belasco. And that was from my Ultima days when I would play Ultima in middle school, like Ultima 4 and Ultima 5.
So I ran a tag BBS at 2400 baud back in high school, and that's back when I used the moniker Trash Can Man from The Stand.
Oh yeah,
and then I graduated because I started reading Pierce Anthony novels. Don't judge me. And
you graduated from Stephen King to Pierce Anthony.
Come on, we all read Pierce Anthony novels.
The Incarnations of Immortality were amazing. How are this not a movie yet? But then I went by Chronos, and then at some point I realized that the last 6 letters of Brian Brushwood was a single syllable Schwood. And I was like, well, I'll just do that. And so I bought it, and I never thought Schwood.com would be a joke. Now there's an eyeglass company named Schwood, and I get their email from time to time, and so I pass it along like, hey, this appears to be for you. And I guess some low-ranking customer service person was just like, hey, why do you have Schwood.com? You should just give it to us.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, no. How about no?
I had that too because Bernie, my name that comes from my last name Burns, is a nickname. My name is Michael Burns. But there's a city in Tasmania spelled the exact same way, Bernie, Tasmania. And I have Bernie.com. I don't have anything up there. I just use it for email. And there was a period of time when they were trying to get it from me. But I didn't realize at the time when I registered it that how important it was going to be to have something like that, to where you had this unique identity. And it's like I've tried to I don't know about you guys, but I've tried to unwind all those handles and move over to my actual name, kind of like you were going through at Ain't It Cool News, think, I should use my real freaking name at the beginning.
Yeah. What was the impetus of that? Did like
There's
Disney
some Schwood
say
glasses? There
they are.
Shout out for Schwood.
Enjoy your free ad. Leave my website alone.
Yeah, no, it was all about the mystique. Like that was the thing is, Ain't It Cool was. There's a lot of brilliance in Ain't It Cool, and I don't think Harry gets enough credit for it, considering what he did right with it, which was we were at a point where print media was still very, very dominant. Ain't It Cool News started 2 years before the first news story that was ever broke on the internet. If the first story to ever really break on the internet was the Clinton scandal, and that was in 1998, and that was by the Drudge Report.
Yeah.
And so the internet was still this new place where anything could happen and nobody cared. And so a lot of us were trying to fight for relevance, and we were being told that you guys didn't matter. You're just web writers. You just write online. Nobody's reading you. Print is what matters. And what would end up happening is by the time I would come around at Ain't It Cool, we would write reviews that would get 3 to 5 million reads a day. And I was a video store clerk, a 25-year-old video store clerk being read more than Roger Ebert was in print, because not as many people were reading print, and print was in decline, but they refused to accept it. So
hey, Brian, real quickly, do you know what video store you worked at? Don't say if you do. Let's guess. I'm going to guess I Love Video.
I would have said... I'm almost certain.
The other choice is Vulcan, right?
Yeah, Vulcan was where I was going to go.
Assuming it was at Blockbuster.
I worked at Blockbuster for a while. I worked at I Love Video for a while, and I worked at Hollywood for the longest period of time.
Oh, I'm
really
so disappointed. You seem like such a Vulcan guy.
I would have loved to work at Vulcan, but there was none near where I lived at the time.
These are great, independent video stores. Not obviously Hollywood or Blockbuster, but I Love Video and Vulcan. And one of the things I loved about it was the people who worked at the store would leave notes on the cases of all the VHS or DVDs.
We would review or make jokes, and it
was great, and I love that. Anyway.
Oh yeah, but so the what ended up happening was Harry realized that there was something very real in creating reviews that were down to earth, that used swears, that used comedy, and that were these characters reviewing it, that we would attract this younger audience, that's what we were offering, is we were offering something different than you could get in print. Why would you read a movie review over an internet movie review? Well, because the internet movie review is going to drop some F-bombs, it's going to make you laugh, and it's going to be told to you by a cartoon character. And there was a lot of appeal in that. In fact, that was one of the big things. People talk about the gratuitous errors on Ain't It Cool, and the big inside secret was they were intentional. Like, we were deliberately not cleaning up our pieces because it felt more real and raw and down to earth, and felt like
you stripped away the pretense, and with that comes a sense of authenticity that resonated with people.
Yeah. People were like, this is a review by somebody I would hang out with, not some stuffy film critic who folds his arms and says, no, Independence Day was a terrible movie. It's like, fuck you, Independence Day fucking rocked. And we were
I remember there was one approach that Harry had in particular where he would write about his day. And the context he was giving was, this is where I was in the headspace that I was in when I saw this movie, which is important. You should know about
Which
it.
sounds so self-indulgent, and you would think would only ruin the review, but in fact, actually, it only makes it all the more relatable.
It was connecting to the fact that people wanted to see personalities. Like, I think he understood that very early on.
Yeah, and the thing is, we didn't even have the word blog yet.
Right.
Blog wasn't popularized until about 2003, and that's 7 years into Ain't It Cool's existence. Like, we were experimenting. We were throwing shit at the wall to see what would stick, and some of it did not work. Some of it was bad. Some of it was questionable, but we were trying it out and seeing what the rules were. And it was crazy how well it worked. Like, it was like working at Rolling Stone in the 60s. Like, everyone wanted to be on the front page of Ain't It Cool News. I went out to LA, again, 25-year-old video store clerk, and I'm on the set of a movie, and one of the actors invites me out to a bar that night to have drinks, and I'm sitting in this bar filled with celebrities who I keep bumping into or keep getting introduced to me, and they know exactly who the fuck I am. Like, they're like, oh, you're Massa Worm, dude, I love your shit, that's great. It's like, it was the weirdest, most surreal thing for this. I was literally just 2 days before the guy getting yelled at because I wouldn't take a late fee off of somebody's account. And here I am, and I, like, at one point that night, I've got this guy who's literally rubbing elbows with me. Like, he's just like, you know, we're that packed in, and like, he keeps bumping me, and I turn to look at who the fuck is bumping my arm, and it's Vin Diesel. And I knew that he was a reader of the site because he had come out to a couple events, and he had 2 different movies that Harry saved from going direct to video. And so I said, oh, hey, Vin. He goes, hey, man. I said, hey, I'm Massa Worm. And he goes, oh, dude. And like, he's like, you want a beer? And so I 25 years old, I'm fucking ringing with Vin Diesel. Like, it was, everybody wanted to be cool with Ain't It Cool. Like, if you've ever seen the movie Almost Famous, that's exactly what it was like. We were all these stupid fucking kids thrown into the deep end of the pool, and we had no idea what to do.
The fun thing, too, about Ain't It Cool News is, I mean, from an industry perspective of starting like blogging and reviews and kind of democratizing all of that, there's another aspect to it, though, too, as a predecessor on the internet, which is the community as well. The community was so hardcore. Were the talkbackers?
It was the predecessor of 4chan.
Yeah, I would say so. I would agree with that. I mean, they were
foul.
intense. And you would get some really brilliant people in there, but brilliant people also can be brutally scathing.
Oh, like one of the most brilliant talkbackers of all time had the worst handle of all time. Remember Danny Glover's dick blood?
That's a worst. That's not the way the word works.
It was crazy. And there was 2 communities that I would go into on a regular basis back then. It was that one, and I'm curious if you guys also went on this, which was the View Askew Kevin Smith's WWW board that he had.
Yeah, you talking about the movie Poop Shoot or the offshoot of that?
No, they just had like a forum. It was almost like a predecessor to chat these days. And so many people that I know were on those boards like back in like 1995, 1996.
So you know the story about Cargill and Kevin Smith, right? No. I wake up one morning. I wake up one morning, and I had only recently subscribed to Kevin Smith on Twitter, and I come in midstream where he's mentioning Massa Worm, and he's just like, and like I come in at the last one. It's like, so fuck you, Massa Worm.
Oh yeah,
you piece of shit. You'll never create anything in your life. You just sit there judging people like me. Eat shit. And I was like, in fact, what did I miss?
He wrote the epitaph I'm going to put on my gravestone, which is You might not be the asshole you seem in print, Massa Worm. Someone out there may even love or tolerate you. And that is going on my gravestone. Signed, Kevin Smith.
There is a backstory that makes sense, but flash forward to the surreality of 10 years later, and I'm seeing a literally tearing up Kevin Smith, high out of his mind, giving a video testimonial of it like, Doctor Strange was the greatest shit ever. Whoever wrote this was a genius. Like,
Dude, he got high and saw it in 4D. Like, that's how he watched my movie. And I'm like, yes, that is the win. Yeah, no, the long story short was I was working for this place. So here, let me give you a quick little rundown of how Brian fits into all this. So I'm working as a video store clerk. I'm doing that for 5 years. I'm not getting paid to write online. Like, I'm not getting paid for any of those reviews. I was literally just doing it for the cachet and for the fun of writing. And we were having a beer at the bar, and he's like, man, why aren't you doing this professionally? And I said, well, it's hard to make a living doing this. And he's like, look, I'm going to tell you how I did it. And he told me a story about how he and his wife, Bonnie, Bonnie had said, okay, I'm going to give you a year to make this magic thing happen.
Wait. She didn't volunteer that right off the bat. Like, I had a pretty good job working at Dell, designing high-end systems and networks. Whenever sales reps would get in over their head, I would help out. But I lived for Wednesday nights when I would do magic at the Electric Lounge, right? And it was only passing the hat, making beer money. But you have that tempting false illusion of, well, maybe someday I'll give this a try full time or whatever.
Yeah.
And then right around the time I was thinking that, I got a raise, and it was a big raise. And I realized, oh, fuck, this is how it happens, is the money gets too good and you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been.
The raise was obviously at Dell and not at the Wednesday night show.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I realized, I was like, I can barely walk away from this much money. If it's any more than this, I will never walk away from it.
Yeah.
And so as a result of the raise, I went to Bonnie. I was like, I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind finding out that it's not in me. What I can't handle is the idea of 20 years from now, me still wondering if I could have made it. And so I was like, I just want 1 year. We don't have any student loan debt. Just if you'll keep the lights on for 1 year, let me get this out of my system. Worst case is a year from now, we have 30 grand of debt and we're like every other kid getting out of college, right? And she was like, okay, you got 1 year. 1 year later, I'd still made crap money, but by that point, I'd read like 20 books on sales and entrepreneurship and business planning and all that stuff. And I went to her and I was like, look, it's still not great, but I think we could do this. Quit your job and join me. And the two greatest days of my life were the day I hired my wife and the day I fired my wife. Because it's tough, to be working as a marital team. But that 1 year that she gave me to figure out whether or not I could make money as a touring magician was a lifesaver. And so that was the pitch, the hard sell I was putting on Cargill.
And he gave me that pitch, and I went home and talked to my wife about it. And she was like, let's think about that. And she thought about it for a couple weeks and said, you know what? You're miserable as a video store clerk. You're great as a writer. I believe in you. I'm going to give you a year. And I'll work. I'll make the money. You just try to make money doing a film review. And if at the end of 1 year you're making a decent amount of money, we'll re-examine it and we'll go on. And so she gave me a year, and within 5 months I was making twice what I was making as a video store clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on there was no looking back. And so I made twice that the first year and 3 times that the second year. And by the third year I was making as much as she was. And I was a professional film critic. And then I saw the bottom dropping out of the internet. I saw what was happening and the way that everything was starting to get gobbled up. Everyone was copying and pasting other people's articles of news. There wasn't that whole, hey, go read this article and then come back and read our commentary on it, gentleman's agreement that used to exist in the early days of film criticism. And I was like, oh, there's not going to be a job for me in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I sat down to write my first book. And so ended up doing that. But while I'm writing that first book, I'm hoofing it at all these different places. I'm working at 4 different movie review places to make that living. And one of them was film.com. And they come to me and they say, hey, Cargill, you're our biggest our biggest Kevin Smith fan here. Why don't you write the about the fallout and aftermath of his whole cop-out debacle where he started screaming at film critics.
Oh, this is pretty far along then in his career.
This is 2010. And
and for context, Cargill was telling me, like, this is a time where it's just like, how many words you want? Yeah, sure, I'll write it. And not knowing when it's going to get published or in what context or with what headline. It's like, Kevin Smith, just give us 500 words on how social media has affected his career.
that is exactly what it was. I would do this. I called it my Sunday night dump. In which every Sunday night I would write 5 articles for film.com, and I would just sit down at about 2 a.m. and write until dawn, and I would churn out these 5 articles that would
Do you still do that, by the way? Are you still writing it like in the middle of the night?
Oh, always. Yeah, no, I do. I do all my best work in the middle of the night when nobody's calling, nobody's writing, nothing's being updated online. If I want a break, I take a break at about 3:30 and check out all my friends in the UK who are waking up on Twitter. And that's, but yeah, no, I write in the middle of the night, and it stuck with me.
So tell me if I've got the right of this. The overall gist of what you wrote for the film.com article was basically we are seeing the sunsetting of Kevin Smith being known as a director, and we're seeing the beginning of him being something more, and it seems to involve social media or whatever. But I don't think Kevin Smith heard or saw any of that, because the first line was something along the lines of, with this tweet, he ended his career as a director.
No. I will actually, no. You are misremembering. What he took issue with was the entire article was about how social media, which was this brand new thing. We still, Facebook was just becoming popular in the mainstream. Twitter had not become popular in the mainstream. It was still a thing that, was used by a bunch of us fringe folks. And he was humiliating himself in public through social media and telling the type of stories that, why would you tell this story in public? Why are you sharing this? And the gist of it was that Kevin Smith's power of what he did was his voice and him sharing these hyper, these really tight, toned down geek references, essays, things like that. His opinion, his voice was why we watched these films. And now he was saturating the market with his voice, and he was becoming irrelevant. And I said that, if he keeps this up, he is approaching irrelevance. And it was like, irrelevant. I'll show you who's irrelevant, internet boy. And he flipped tables. And he spent half an hour. In fact, I'll never forget.
Well, that's basically the entire premise of Jay and Silent Bob.
But yeah, so Kevin Smith got so furious with me, and then chilled out about it. And then he was going to show Red State to 50 bloggers in his home. And somebody said, hey, you should invite Massive Worm. And he tweeted at me, he goes, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, no, absolutely. Nothing would show that that's water under the bridge, like having Massive Worm come to my place and watch my new movie. But I understand why he wouldn't do that, so the ball's in his court. And I was like, oh, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And so I pick up the phone and I call Harry. I'm like, Harry, you've got to pay to fly me out to do this. This is my gonzo piece, man. Like, I'm like, the story, it's not just me writing about a director. It's me as part of the story. Every journalist always dreams of having that one, like, Hunter S. Thompson crazy gonzo experience. And I'm like, this is it. We got to do this. He's like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. We'll fly you out. And so at the end, he does the Q&A, and I go up to him and I'm like, hey man, it's good to see you again. I'm Massive Worm. And he goes, oh, you're one of those people I got into an argument on the internet with, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I am. He goes, I'm sorry, man. I do that. I'm really sorry. And I'm like, well, can we hug it out? And he's like, of course we can hug it out. So me and Kevin Smith hugged it out, and then eventually the career happened, and he wrote a very high crying review of my movie. So all is good.
I want to hear the path to getting to Doctor Strange from there. But I do want to say, I think we need a word for whatever that regret hangover after internet rage happens. Like, what is that? Like, oh,
God, because it feels so
in the
good
moment, in the moment it makes sense,
right?
And then afterwards it's always stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, every single time.
And it's not, I used to think like, oh, that person is drunk, that person is high, that person is tired. But it's like, there have been times it's 3:00 in the afternoon, and it's like the spirit comes over me. I'm like, this person needs to know that they're wrong.
Yeah. My thing now is, like, my defense mechanism that I use is like unless I can see their face in their avatar, I just assume everyone's 12 years old. It's just a nice defense
Okay, you know what? Even if you can't see their face, they're 12. They're all 12. Everybody's 12.
It's nice because then you can just be like, everything just goes off your back.
There's
No big deal.
a fantastic article by the wonderful writer David Wong at cracked.com called 6 Harsh Truths That Will Make You a Better Person. And it's filled with great advice, but my favorite part is at the very end, he explains the nature of trolling. And when people post nasty comments, he says, they all boil down to the same thing. And then he puts in quotes, stop trying. What you're doing is different than the way I would have done it, and the attention you're getting is making me uncomfortable with myself. And then once that's the filter through which you read every negative comment, it's like, hey man, that's okay. Here's a hug. Let's hug it out. In the words of Massaworm.
All right, well, let me read this. This episode of the Rishi podcast is brought to you by Hims. Before we get back in the conversation here, Ashley's actually going to join us here in a second. I want to show an RTA. Patrick, do we have that RTAA? We had an RTA. This is an older one, but I want to show it to you because we've had so many comments about this RTAA, and we decided to finally act on it. But here's one of the old Rooster Teeth animated adventures.
I have seen something explode in real life, actually, and it was glorious, kind of like movies.
Yeah?
I don't know if I've ever told the story. My father set his phone on fire once.
How?
It was a Sony Ericsson.
Okay.
It was back in the day, and he was outside, and he was talking on his phone, and he got sweaty. My father, the genius, decides I should put it in the microwave to dry it off.
What?
No, he couldn't have possibly thought that.
So I vividly remember walking past him and going, "Oh, hey, Dad, what are you microwave?" And before I could get microwaving out of my mouth, our microwave exploded into like this glorious Roman candle and scorched the ceiling of our
Holy
kitchen.
shit.
And I was like, "What the fuck was that?"
Right.
And he was like, "I microwaved my cell phone." And I just remember going, "You would excuse me?"
Had he never had a fork in a microwave, anything before?
His mind thought, and you know, this is when phones had keys still. It wasn't all touch screens. And so, you know, the water got into the keys and he panicked. And so he thought, I need to dry it quickly.
Didn't think maybe like a blow dryer.
A blow dryer, a bag of rice, turning it over on a towel, none of that. He thought, his immediate brain went, phone, microwave. And he's like, I only put it in for 5 seconds. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Like, all those solutions take time.
Yeah, 5 seconds is all he needed.
That's awesome.
It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
PSA, don't put your cell phone in the microwave.
I can't believe
like-
to this day, we always make fun of him. It's so great.
It's like you're like, well, ma'am, why did you microwave your baby? It's like it was wet.
It was wet.
So that was actually a reference to another discussion that we had where Mika talked about how she was wearing some anime shirt at the time. And so when the animators for RTA made it, they just made her wearing the some anime shirt. Every time that shirt has appeared in an RTAA, the comments have been dominated by people asking us to make a some anime shirt. So the merch crew finally made the some anime shirt. So for those of you who have asked for it endlessly, first of all, you can get this, and we hope you do. But secondly, you can also now shut up and never ask for it ever again. There's your lovely product.
And there are free copies of that for the guests, right?
Yeah, if you would like a some anime shirt, that'd be great. That we would be happy to do. We'll even put your name on the back. We'll put Robert C. Cargill right on the back.
Robert C. Cargill.
Joining us is Ashley
What's up?
Hi, Ashley.
Hey, how's
for
it
this
going?
not at all pre-recorded Memorial Day podcast.
Yeah, no, we're just
Happy
hanging
Memorial
out on
Day,
Memorial Day.
everybody.
Yeah.
Time to break out all the flag shirts at Target.
And knock back a few beers and try to figure out what we're celebrating.
Yeah. So listen, did you hear how supportive these guys' wives were about their careers in the early days? They're like, go do it for a year. Don't make any money. Who cares?
What do you want to do?
I don't know. Something. I want to be a trapeze artist.
You
or
want
something.
to you want to start up a successful media company? Because that sounds like a lot of fun.
That sounds like a good idea. It should do it in 2003, where apparently it's a lot easier. I've been told now.
Like it was, dude, it was literally an open door to anyone. Anyone could show up, and as long as you did something halfway interesting, there was an audience because there were so many people online and nobody was generating content.
Yeah, but this is also the early days before distribution had been consolidated, and man, is it a different place now. Now there really are. So in the world of
Nobody
variety,
gave a shit about it either. It was like below home video, which
Yeah.
was lousy. You know what I mean? They said like if your movie went straight to home video, that was a huge insult. And web was like somewhere below that, but like slightly above porn.
So
That's
I
where we lived.
was literally being read by 3 to 5 million people a day, and my parents were like, "So you're still doing that internet thing, huh?" Like it was crazy. Like they didn't take it seriously for years.
In 2010, we would do interviews. This is like, at this point, 7 or 8 years into us as a company. we would do interviews, and most of the interviews ended in the exact same way. They go, oh, it's like one last thing. Do you think like one day people will make money doing what you guys are doing? It's like, we just walked you around. There's 40 people that work here.
I still get the question, like, and not just for tour. You know, I've toured all over the United States. I've performed in every state in the United States. I've been on the Tonight Show twice. I've toured
Have
the
you
world.
really? Wait. You've been on the Tonight Show?
Yeah,
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Well, that's the weird. That's like the dark chapter is because what I was doing is I was real time trading my my attention for money, which is a hamster wheel, right? So it's like I learned how to eat fire, break bricks over my head, read minds, do. It's a good stage show. Penn and Teller said very nice things when I did Penn and Teller Fool Us or whatever.
His stage show is amazing. Speaking of Venn diagram, he once did his show at my birthday party.
I've worked a birthday party. I worked your 30th birthday party.
That is
That's
correct.
right. I forgot
That's
about
how
that.
long we've known each other. You showed up and you're like, I didn't bring a present, but I brought me.
But I realized
I'm going to improvise a present.
But during that time, I was getting fully booked. I was on the road 150, 200 days out of the year, performing colleges and universities.
Now, how far was
nationwide.
this in? Was this in the first year you were reaching that level?
No. First year was maybe 20 shows, then 40, then 60, then at some point around 2003, I leveled out. I hit max bandwidth, and then I was having colleges say, "Well, what else can you do?" And they're like, "Well, I can come do the show again." And they're like, "Yeah, we've seen it. You stick the fire in your mouth. It's very nice."
You break the brick over your head.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
yeah, we've seen all that.
Exactly. And so, but then what I realized is that after the show, this is around the time that John Edward was doing his Talking to the Dead People TV show, and everybody would say like, "Well, how does he do that? What's this?" And I would find myself doing like an improvisational 30 to 40 minute lecture explaining the tenets of skepticism and stuff to all these folks. Folks.
Fucks. Yeah, no, you just saw yourself on TV and you're like, oh my
Like,
God,
this asshole.
I'm so sexy.
But I realized like, oh, well, maybe I could give a lecture on college campuses. So I wrote a lecture called Scam, Sasquatch, and the Supernatural. And so now I had 2 shows to do on college campuses. And after about 5 years of that, I realized I'm still not reaching enough people, because if you've ever worked in the live arts or variety entertainment, there are moments where you're performing for 300 people and it's absolute electricity. You're connecting with them and saying something transcendent, and then they give you a standing ovation or whatever. And then 2 weeks later, not one person can remember your name, and they have to remember that you were kind of funny. And that's part of the reason that I used to do the Guile Crazy Spikes, is because I just wanted something for them to hold on to that they would remember down the road. And then around this time, YouTube 2005 launches up. So in 2006, I start at least cataloging Life on the Road with Brian Brushwood on the Road. And then I had the idea of one of the other things that naturally always happened was, as soon as the show was over, the Student Activities Board would take me out to eat, and they all wanted to learn a trick for themselves. They were like, what can you teach me? And so after doing that a few times, I was like, I think this should be virtualized and distributed. So I had the idea for Scam School that I took to Revision 3. And at the time, I thought, this will be a good starter gig. I'll get experience. I'll learn how to talk on camera. It's not going to go anywhere. All internet startups fail.
Oh, man.
And here we are 10 years and 500 plus episodes down the road.
I miss that hair.
Yeah.
I miss that
And
hair so
Revision
much.
3 started as, was it officially a video offshoot of Dig, or was it just Kevin Rose? who was involved?
Kevin Rose and a few other Tech TV alums put together. They were the founders of it. And in the early days, it was pitched as a tech network, basically a rebirth of what was good about Tech TV, because they got bought by G4, and there was a lot of people who didn't like the gaming direction of G4. They wanted more tech-centric stuff. And that's why I pitched Scam School as the only show dedicated to social engineering at the bar and on the street. And so in the early days, you'll notice, like, for the first 4 or 5 years, I never used the M word. I never admitted that what I was doing was teaching magic, because, oh no, it's a tech network, this is a tech show, I'm teaching you hacking, life hacking, skills hacking, I don't know. Those are tech terms. Yeah, exactly, scams. And then at some point, it became clear, like, there's a lot of young magicians learning stuff. And by that point, it had been bought by Discovery Digital, and now it's part of Group 9 Productions. But the weird part for me is 10 years into this is to hear so many people say, oh yeah, you're the reason I got into magic, because I started watching it in elementary school. And then now I'm on America's Got Talent. I'm like, you motherfuckers.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It's so weird. Like, I'll talk to young film critics and they'll be like, oh man, when I was in fifth grade, I was reading your reviews, and I'm like, those weren't appropriate for a fifth grader. What were you doing? But yeah, no, it's so weird to like how that that space created and inspired so many other people, and it just keeps feeding. And it's very weird. Like that's how I now view these people that I'm a huge fan of, that I grew up with, through that lens of like, oh, you were just somebody just like hoofing it, trying to sell books, and I picked up your book, and then I became one of your fans, and it inspired me to do this. And
Guess your question is, has magic survived in the information age? Because it seems like, growing up watching like David Copperfield and have a special order to make the Statue of Liberty disappear, there was no impression that I had that he was going to tell us how he did it. But now I would imagine that most of the time when people see a trick, their first question is, how'd you do it? And then you say, well, it's magic. It's just magic. And they're like, no bullshit. You have to tell me. Like, people feel like they have to know how things are done. Yeah. It's just part of our, they're going to do a 3-hour read on Wikipedia after they see a trick.
So here's an honest answer. And I don't normally say this in public, but I think that knee-jerk reaction of, I can't tell you, it's a secret or whatever, I think that is a social construct that magicians say because they haven't put enough thought into coming up with something more clever. And what they don't realize is a side effect of that is it makes you a dick, and it makes them think you're a dick. Seinfeld had the routine. Every magic routine is the same. Here's a quarter, now it's gone, you're a jerk. Now it's back, you're still a jerk, show's over, right? That's what everybody thinks of magicians. And that's because of this whole, well, a good magician never reveals his secrets. Whereas, how little effort would it take to do something with a little more nuance? Do a trick, and then somebody says, yes, the knee-jerk reaction is, how do you do that? What they're really saying is, I am experiencing amazement at this moment. Guide me to more of this experience. But instead, people respond with defense, and they're like, I'm not going to tell you, so fuck you. And that's why magicians have a bad rep. Whereas, how much easier would it be to say, oh, did you enjoy that? And what are they going to say? No, they just asked you how it was done. And they're like, yeah, I enjoyed it. And then you say, would you like to see another? And again, what are they going to say? No? Like it's so much more elegant, and it dodges that question. Now, if the next day, 3 or 4 days later, somebody calls me on the phone saying, I think my life has really changed as a result of that card trick, I would really like to know.
Can't stop thinking about it.
You actually have that story.
A number of those stories.
Yeah, no, but you have that. I don't know if you can share it, but let's throw this out there just in case. Can you tell the story about J.J. Abrams?
Oh, you know
I was actually hoping it was going to be actually Doctor Strange.
Oh, no.
Impressed.
No,
I
can tell those stories later, but he has one of the greatest stories known to man.
Okay, so there. Just to wrap up this thought, I feel like magicians would be better served if they learned to more subtly guide people into the next thing, and they didn't meet force with force. By saying, no, I'll never tell you the secret, you make the secret the star of the show. And the secret should not be the star of the show. The secret should be the sauce that makes the story so wonderful, right? So, separate situation. Man, I know the exact day. It was Father's Day? Yeah, Father's Day.
Do you know the exact day?
4 years 3 or 4 years ago.
It's while The Force Awakens was being shot.
Yeah.
This is the story. This is the beginning of this story.
Okay, so we've had on our comedy podcast, Night Attack, we've had Greg Grunberg from Heroes and a number of other projects.
And Felicity, thank you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. A good friend. And if you don't know, he and J.J. Abrams have been childhood friends.
Yeah, what's the story there? He's in everything.
Yeah, they literally grew up together. I mean, it's like
that's a good gig.
Yeah, right. And and so I mean, if I was J.J. Abrams, I'd throw Grunny in everything. He's amazing. He's fun and funny. So I get a text from a number I don't recognize saying, "Hey, how did David Blaine make it appear in an orange?" And I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" And then it says, "This is Grunny," and then it says, "I'm in England," and then it says, "JJ wants to know." And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep talking to my parents. And then the phone rings, and I answer the phone. It's from the same number. And clearly at a bar, Greg Grunberg says, I have a raging schwoody, and I have to know how he did the trick.
What was the trick?
That's what I asked. I was like, well, which trick? He was like, David Blaine.
What do you think
Obviously.
He said Harrison Ford thought of a card, and it was in an orange. And
Oh, that's when he kicked him out of his house, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a funny bit, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a huge David Blaine fan, but that was funny.
But here's the backstory that you don't know about that bit.
Okay, so I was like, well, I haven't seen it, but if he described the effect, he was like, nah, let this guy explain. And then he hands the phone over, and he was like, hey, it's JJ. And I was like, shit, I'm talking to JJ Abrams. And JJ is a magician. He knows his stuff on that, right? And so I get the broad strokes, and I'm like, okay, if it looks that clean, if in general somebody just thinks of a card and it's in an orange, I don't know how they did it, but the way I would do it is before the cameras were rolling, I would make sure to firmly establish what that card would be, so I would have time to sneak it into an orange, right? And
Before the trick or during the trick?
I mean, when the cameras are rolling, who knows what that means,
Gotcha,
right?
okay.
So, and then JJ was like, no. He just, Harrison, and now I realize that for all I know, Harrison's in the room as well. Harrison swears.
Oh, because done the movie, yeah.
He just thought of a card, and it showed up in an orange. And so I'm just like, I was like, well, let me take a look at it and take a look. And I watch it, and magicians have this thought, the two clean principle. Like there's signal and then there's noise. If it's pure signal, for example, if I were to ask Cargill to think of a card, and then I were to, and he says, the Queen of Diamonds, and I were to pull back my shirt and you would see tattooed upon my body a Queen of Diamonds, that would be too clean. You would immediately think, there's no way that was natural. I have to suspect all this stuff. But if we added a lot of noise, like if I asked you to grab a deck of cards, you shuffle it, you pull out a card, you could change your mind 5 times.
Yeah.
That adds more noise. But when you pick the Queen of Hearts and I reveal that it's tattooed on my chest, now all of a sudden it's like I have no idea how that's possible, right? Watching the performance, it's like this is too much signal, not enough noise. Something definitely, I don't know what, but something happened before the camera rolls, right? And so sure enough, I call back. And Grundy doesn't even answer his own phone. JJ does. he's like, all right, what is it? I was like, man, it looks to me like something happened before those cameras rolled. And he goes, yeah, no, that's not what Harrison said. And I'm like, it's not for me to call Han Solo a liar, but I'm sure that's how he remembers it. Because again, that's another thing magicians rely on is the malleability of memory, right? And so Grundy gets the phone, super disappointed. He was like, well, thanks for nothing, Schwood. And so I say, you know what? I have some friends who worked on the special. Let me find out what I can find out to confirm. But I'm telling you, something happened before the thing went. And so I call them and leave a message. Hours later, I get a phone call. God, I don't know if anything I'm about to say is true. This is a flight of fancy that very likely is fiction. So imagine a short story that ends like this.
I could tell that part of the story if I need me to, if for legal reasons.
I get a phone call from my friend who worked on the show, and I say, like, weirdest day ever. J.J. Abrams called me. Harrison Ford wants to know, this is what happens. It looks to me like something happened before the cameras were rolling. Tell me I'm not crazy. Because I'd like to think I know a thing or two about magic. And the guy says, well, number one, yes, of course something happened before the cameras were rolling. I was like, but Harrison Ford said he just thought of a card and it was just in an orange. And he says, yeah, because he was high. Watch it again. And sure enough, if you watch that clip,
He's high
his
as
pupils
fuck.
are larger than his face. He's clearly
Han Solo was stoned out of his mind and watched them stoned out of his mind, watched them put the entire trick together where they put all of the cards in all these various places, completely forgot that they put the cards in all the places, thought of a card, and holy shit, it's in an orange.
I don't know if it's true. As far as, you know what, to Mr. Ford's lawyer, I just assume this is fiction. I've always assumed it's fiction, but that certainly is a satisfying end to the tale if it were true.
Sounds like that's the trick for any magician coming up is just get everybody in the audience stoned out of their mind.
Oh, are you kidding?
That's what a friend of mine, Justin Willman, did exactly that on his Comedy Central special. He went with Doug Benson and did magic for high people at a dispensary. It was pretty great.
Can I ask you just a general question about magic?
Sure.
So is there part of magic that kind of crosses over with hypnotism? of like the power of suggestion as well. I mean, there's some tricks where you do them, but you know there's a chance they might not work out, or is every trick I'm going in 100% I know it's going to work?
So this is a idea of skepticism and scientific and magic. This is a cross section here. There's something called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, which is you grab your 6-shooter, you shoot the side of a barn, then you walk over and you paint the target around it, right? And it's all based on the fact that timing wise, nobody knows what you were aiming for, right? So in that regard, hypnotism certainly is in the same boat. Stage hypnotism, people ask all the time if hypnotism is real. And my response is, yes, it's real. It's also nothing like what you think it is. And the way I explain it is like, if you've ever laughed at a movie or cried at a movie, you have been moved to a physiological reaction by a situation that never happened, to characters who never existed. But you allowed yourself to make them real enough that you felt a real thing, right?
You okay, Ash?
They exist.
Does that count for cringing as well?
Oh, wait,
Because I
wait.
think one of the most cringeworthy scenes I've seen in a movie lately was when Doctor Strange's hands go through the fucking dashboard of his car. That made me like my butthole puckered.
How could you do that?
Yeah.
There's I did stuff that didn't show up on screen. Like you just have to acknowledge that they don't exist, Ashley.
I thought it was
they do.
I thought it was a cool thing in Infinity War that he had scars all the way up his fingers.
That is something we had a very long discussion about, and it's something I fought for very hard. Was I felt that in order for Doctor Strange to work, he never fixes his hands. Like that was a thing. Like there was a lot of talk that, oh no, the reward he gets at the end of the movie is he gets his hands back. And I'm like, no. The reward at the end of the movie is he makes the sacrifice to be a hero. And at the same time, we don't get to see disability in film and see it really with the hero very often, and see somebody represented who suffers from a disability and is still one of the most powerful people in the world despite that fact.
Yeah.
And so I felt that was really important. And so, yeah, that was the thing, was any scene where you would see his hands, he would spend an hour in makeup getting the scars put all over his hands, even if they only appeared for just a second. Like it was a big thing. And it was,
But I think it's an important thing because it implies a weakness behind the scenes. You know, much like a magician projects an aura of authenticity and in controlness, when really all he's thinking is like, don't pick a black card, don't pick a black card, don't pick a black card. But you never see that internal dialogue on there. But as far as hypnotism, there is clinical hypnotism and then there's stage hypnotism. And you'll notice that a stage hypnotist act is basically like an ascending ladder of increasing social pressure.
Right.
So, for example, if I were to say, hey, right now, take off your shirt and dance like Lady Gaga, you would think that would be very painful and uncomfortable for me to do
And
socially.
then he would totally do it. What's up? How you doing?
But
are we all doing that? I mean, I'm down.
think of it as like water always goes downhill. This is the same trick I use on anytime I get somebody on the phone and I'm trying to do a customer service thing. I understand, like, never ask a yes/no question, because if they can say no, they'll say no. So instead, what you do is you make the easiest solution for them to do the thing you want them to do. And that's the social contract. The more people who show up to a stage hypnosis show, the better the show is, because the social pressure is so great where somebody's like halfway through the show, it's like, well, I already pretended that I was hot or cold or whatever. And it's like, do I really want to suddenly admit that this isn't working? And again, you can talk yourself into a state of mind where you do feel like, or you'll half remember. It'll be like a half remembered dream when somebody says you won the lottery, and you act out so vividly the reaction of winning the lottery that later when they say like, oh, where's your lottery ticket? Much like if you dreamed about winning the lottery, you'll have a brief flash of like, oh no, wait, that's right. That was the stage show. That wasn't a real thing.
There's also that social pressure, but also then the audience also escalates where they start laughing harder and harder. And that's the kind of thing where you do feel an obligation. Like, I think there's an innate performance in each of us, or innate performer, I should say, where once you start to get those reactions, you just kind of start to lean into it even more. It also seems like the first part of every hypnosis show is a vetting process of like, let's get rid of these people who clearly aren't going to play along.
So there's a second phase too. First is the vetting process where it's like you need to make it clear that you're sifting for people who are going to be malleable and cooperative. And you'll also notice a slow shift in language. Early on, they'll very carefully say, let's pretend we're cold. How would you act if you were cold? How would you act if you were tired? And blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, how would you act? Just let your body relax. And when I say sleep, I want you to enter this state again. So now what you've done is you've sort of set up a programming loop where the word sleep equals let everything go loose. And then at some point you stop saying all that preamble and you just say sleep. So the visuals you get later on are, and again, because memory is so malleable, you're able after the fact, you won't remember all the lead up stuff. You'll just remember somebody being halfway through and then saying sleep and then they just collapse down.
That's most fascinating. Did you guys see the power of suggestion? I think is incredible to me. Did you there was this big viral thing last week about Yanny or Laurel.
Yeah.
They played a video or an audio clip and people heard Yanny or they heard Laurel. I'm sure you guys know all about it.
Why do you keep saying Laurel twice?
I know, right? Yeah, sorry. I'll try to say it in a different
the
voice.
better one is the green needle or...
So that's what I was going to bring up was the Green Needle one, which I think is way more fascinating.
I agree. I think that's much, much better.
But that didn't work for me.
What?
Yeah, it didn't work on her.
I heard like green brain thingy.
Well, explain what it is.
So it was, this is an audio track. It's kind of like the Laurel Yanny thing, except the difference is you will hear whichever one you want to hear.
If you
so you think
of
I
it,
want to hear this one, you then hear it.
Well, it works exactly the same way as in the 90s, there was this crazy thing that happened with a Teletubby doll where you would pull the string and it would go, batty, batty, but people heard, faggot, faggot.
Oh, geez.
Right. And so they had to pull it off shelves because the minute some Christian mother heard those words and said that, all of a sudden people were rushing out and buying them because they wanted the faggot, faggot doll. And it was a very weird thing where when you actually listen to it, it's like, that's not what it's saying at all. Like it doesn't.
Well, that was weird too, because it was this whole conspiracy theory that it was pushing a gay agenda because the upside down triangle on Tinky Winky, I think it's Tinky Winky. I want to pretend like I don't know who that is.
Do you know the name of all of them, Bernie?
God, I couldn't even. I just think I just know Tinky Winky.
So we did.
I didn't have kids at that point.
Is one of them
in time.
Pinkie Pie?
We did an episode of The Modern Rogue.
But why would you use that word if you're pushing a gay agenda? Why would you just slur like that?
No. It was absolutely ludicrous. But it was one of those things where it was one of those first internet things where you could watch the video online and listen to it, and it was like, oh, that's not what it's saying at all. Like this, what is everybody? But everyone was hearing it when you tried to listen to it.
So,
but this one was, if you think brainstorm, you hear the word brainstorm. If you think the words green needle, you hear green needle.
Which is so
and it works
amazing
like a charm
because
on me.
green needle has an extra syllable in there, and yet somehow you hear the syllable, the third syllable on there.
I've heard both Yanny and Laurel. Like depending on
So
what time of day it was, I heard something else, and I'm like, I actually for a while was searching around to see if there were if this was a big hoax, and there were literally two different
I did the same thing.
audio files that I was
did
listening.
the exact same thing.
Look,
I did that with the
internet
dress as well.
skepticism's healthy.
So
What's that?
Internet skepticism's healthy.
Oh God, no kidding, right?
These are all really good examples of what they call priming. We did an episode on backmasking on The Modern Rogue where we played just some a random track by a local band named the Draculas, and we played it backwards. And it's like, this is nonsense sound that means nothing. He's like, great, now I want you to hear these lyrics. And he said a bunch of lyrics, and then sure enough, once you had that filter, that lens through which you watched everything, it was like, yeah, no, I hear it plain as day. That's amazing.
Ryan Rushwood is the devil.
Exactly.
The devil. The devil.
So you use basically verbal or contextual clues basically to have
Think
the
about
person who is listening to it perform some kind of action. You're like planting that seed.
Right.
What a great time to bring up this episode of the Rooster Teeth Podcast is brought to you by Blue Apron. So that would actually be a great viral thing for a company to do. Is use their like this green needle brainstorm thing, but with their actual trademark name of some kind.
Man, but then you'd have to find something like super controversial to light it up on Reddit that it also sounds like.
Oh, I read a crazy story just recently. You guys know about this when Clear Pepsi came out.
Is this about Tab?
Yeah, that Coca-Cola, when they were introducing Clear Pepsi, Coke decided to put out Clear Tab at the same time and intentionally poorly marketed it so that it was basically a brand designed to die and drag down Clear Pepsi with it.
By power of association.
Yeah. Wild.
Isn't that wild? And it worked.
Dude,
And
I
you know what?
really
Clear
want to
Pepsi
get into
sucked, but
corporate
yeah.
espionage. It sounds like a lot of fun.
You know what was actually I feel did the most damage to Clear Pepsi?
Clear Pepsi?
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
Van
Saturday
Halen?
Live.
Saturday Night Live, the Clear
Yeah.
Gravy.
Yep.
Like that was, they did this whole gag on Clear Pepsi where it was Clear Gravy and it was the grossest thing you've ever seen in your life. And it literally just, anytime I hear of Clear Pepsi, after that, it just turned my stomach
But-
because
and
I thought of
It was
Clear
for a hot
Gravy.
minute when everything was going clear.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Because this is when Zima came out, and
There's a Miller that was clear as well,
yeah,
right?
the SNL bit thing was really just a scathing indictment of, in general, the idea of anything becoming clear is dumb. Knock it off. And then that so resonated with people. That was the end of Clear Pepsi.
I don't know. I really liked all the clear PCs and electronics for a while.
Yeah, Miller
that was
Clear.
a sweet trend.
You know what what I really miss is going to gyms and saying, "Can I get that with Clear Gravy?" And then they go, "Is Clear Pepsi okay?" Sorry, I hate Pepsi. Brought to you by Pepsi.
Were you born and raised in Austin, Cargill?
No, I was born in San Antonio, but I'm a military brat, so I moved around.
Oh, okay.
And then I moved back to San Antonio when I was 14. And then when I was 19, I fell in love with a girl, and I followed her up to Austin when she went to college, and been here ever since.
So I know people that have moved great distances for their significant other, and they don't like to say that. They don't like to mention that they made big moves for love. But for me, that's one of the most legitimate reasons to make a big change in your life is for love. But people feel like, especially if it doesn't work out, that it was like, I didn't want to tell anybody that. I
Yeah,
loved
but
her.
if it totally worked out, then, like I followed that girl up here and I'm still married to her. Like we just bought a new house together. Like our life is awesome. Like, of course I'm willing to say, yeah, I followed her up. She was totally fucking worth
And she
it.
bankrolled you for a year, man. That was pretty dope.
Best wife ever, dude.
You know, I want
Best
to say
wife
back
ever.
when you were talking about your starting off and then, X amount of months in, you were hitting your financial goals and then doubling that and then tripling that. That's always a really great thing. And those are the hitting your financial goals, especially for your career, is really important. It helps you never look back. Then there's also that thing that people always say of, oh, well, if you're doing something you love, then you really don't work a day in your life. That's not true at all.
That's horseshit.
I don't
That's
think.
not at all true. Not
I don't think that's
remotely.
true. But there is a
It
thing
just
that nobody
makes
ever
the work easier.
there's something that nobody talks about when your hobby becomes your vocation, which is then everything you were normally doing or spending money on in your private life is now just part of your everyday business life. That I think is a huge fringe benefit for it. Like everything that I do for my job here, I don't have really anything to spend money on at home because I have video games and comic books and computers and stuff like that.
Oh no, you find things.
No, but
Yeah, that's true. That's
You
true.
bought a flamethrower. What's the work application?
Did you
of
buy the Boring
flamethrower?
Company ones?
I pre-ordered.
did you buy one from Elon Musk?
Nice.
Here's why. I have learned in my long life on the internet, don't ever pre-order soft products like software. Always pre-order hard products.
Really? How's your vessel?
Well, I got that for Gavin. This is why I brought you on the podcast and bring everything like
remember,
this up.
remember me talking about greatest wife ever?
Yeah, this vessel was a cup that I bought for Gavin. We knew it was bullshit. I love crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is like people's raw ambition, and then everybody just kind of dumps money into it. And this was a cup that when you poured a fluid into it, it would analyze the fluid and tell you what was in it.
sounds
break
awesome.
it, break
It's
it
a
down by
tricorder.
sugar. Yeah, exactly. And they had this, of course, totally conceptual video that went along with their
Oh, it's
crowdfunding
brilliant
campaign.
video. Yeah.
But of course, 4 years later, they just shut down and they,
Well, and
they never
I'm
made the
sure
cut.
there's all kinds of legalese in all of those where it's like, you are giving away money. Let's be very clear. And maybe you'll get something. Thank you.
Yeah, Kickstarter updated all of their legalese. It's like, we're not responsible for any of this, by the way.
Yeah, they you can't sue the crowdfunding platforms, but now you can apparently sue the people who have the campaigms.
Really?
That's a change that has happened over time. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm suddenly rethinking all kinds of business strategies.
I'm going to kickstart a movie that I'm definitely going to make.
Well, that's the thing. It's like an artistic endeavor. I mean, that is to me the part of crowdfunding is you want to see this thing get made. And then
Yeah.
part of that is kind of like a social contract of, guess what? It might not get made. Might not happen. Even if they meet their financial goal, it might not happen.
You know, and it's interesting because the obligation, theoretically, the obligation is to make the thing that you promise. But back in the 1990s, Michael
Yeah, pretty
Robertson, founder of MP3.com, predicted the rise of the middle class rock star. He said digital distribution is going to make it possible for you to make decent money, not
How do
crazy
you know all
money.
these people? I don't know anyone apparently. I just know Jeff and Gus, and that's it.
Well, but I think what we're seeing 20 years later is the rise of the middle class patron, where people, yes, they want the thing to be made, but what they're really doing is they're purchasing that awesome feeling of knowing that I am supporting independent artists and I'm making something, and that when it comes out, I can say I had a hand in doing that. That's my name in the credits and all that stuff. And it used to be that was the land of people who are buying museums with their millions of dollars or whatever, and now you can do it for $1 a month on Patreon or what have you.
Yeah, it's funny what I like what people are using crowdfunding for. There's a group called Adopt a Chateau, but it's in French because it's in France, and they're going around and
What's the French word for chateau?
Chateau.
Adopt
There
a
you go.
chateau.
Okay.
Un chateau. They're crowdfunding, like getting some of these dilapidated castles and chateaus, and then crowdfunding them. And then the dream is now you can own a portion of a chateau in France.
This is too close. You
Think
realize,
it'd be
like,
timeshare?
Yeah,
Would you timeshare a castle?
yeah. You have to show up in full armor, but yeah.
I have a thing like that where I actually I'm a Scotch drinker, a heavy Scotch drinker at times, and occasionally I buy Lafroig. And
Oh, boy.
Every bottle of 18-year-old Lafroig comes with a free 1 foot by 1 foot plot of land, like
Is
a
that true?
deed. Yeah, it comes with a deed to a 1 foot by 1 foot plot of land in Scotland.
You get like 12 of those, you get your 7 friends back
So
together.
yeah,
and
no, I
live on
bought
it.
enough. I've apparently bought enough Scotch that I can pitch a tent somewhere and be like, "Get off of my land."
Lafroig is brutal, dude.
It's as my wife says, it's like drinking liquid Band-Aids.
Okay, I had a guy in Specs ruin these Islay scotches.
Islay, yeah.
Islay, is that what it is?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, do I know my Islays, my friend?
Yeah, I liked them. I had tried Lagavulin and I enjoyed it.
Yep.
And then I was working my way up to Lafroig, but it's hardcore.
I
Yeah,
think you
the
had me
Lafroig
drink
isn't
some
playing around.
Lafroig. I
Yeah.
told you that I enjoyed Scotch, and you were like, "Here's some
I can
Lafroig."
fix that.
Yeah. Now I don't really.
But a
drink
guy in
Scotch.
Specs was talking
let
to
me
another
introduce
customer
you
and
to
said
my
the
friend
Band-Aids thing.
Bunnahabhain.
Wait.
Let's talk.
Okay, I didn't realize that you were on the Scotch Whiskey train. Are you familiar with the Whiskey Vault right here in Austin, Texas?
No.
Wizard Academy is a business academy.
I went out there at your recommendation. Ashley and I drove out to this Wizard Tower.
Yes.
Out in Central Texas.
All they did was
That was Brian that
sell,
told me about
they
it.
were selling some crystals and.
Oh,
We
no,
stopped, we stopped on our way back from.
That's at the gift shop for people who are getting free weddings, right? So that's
That's
where we went.
Yeah, so
That's where we
they,
ended up.
they do over 1,000 weddings. A venue is a beautiful venue if you want to go get a free
It's
wedding.
like a Wizard Tower.
But the Wizard Tower is where the business academy is. That's where they bring in like world-class teachers and stuff. And they have started a whiskey sommelier program.
you guys
And,
found that fast. That was impressive.
it is
Nice job, broadcast.
amazing. They've got a secret vault behind a library. You pull back some library books and you get inside, and there are hundreds of whiskeys. And it's a 3-day program to become a whiskey sommelier. And dude is not messing around. Like you have to take a test at the end and be able to identify like this is definitely the Canadian, this is definitely the Japanese, this is definitely the Irish. You learn all the background on how all this stuff is made. They have a couple of video series, youtube.com/Whiskey Vault, and their new one is Whiskey Biscuits. You can find it. But you would love these guys. Oh
How do
man, I got to get you
video
out there.
Something like that.
I'm pretty basic. I'll drink Jim Beam and then also drink Lafroig. You know what I mean? It's just
okay.
Not,
Wow,
that,
there's
not
some-
that Jim Beam is a Scotch.
When you
Bernie.
get to experience the tour of Scotland that Daniel Whittington does, he gets up there with a map of Scotland, and the fact that he's pointing to these different areas, and he points out that the peat is, like you are tasting the actual earth of that region.
It tastes like peat moss.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Oh, highly recommended. Highly recommended.
Yeah, see, I'm
gonna get you out.
I'm on the 20-year version of that, where I just go bottle by bottle, and I'm slowly touring the world, and it's great.
We had a lot of fun. Where did we go? Melbourne? Was that where we were?
Yes.
We took Ellie, my assistant, out, and she was 25, and so we got her a whiskey that was as old as she was.
Oh wow.
And tried it. She did not enjoy it at all. I don't
Well, it
think.
depends on. It depends. The thing is that once you get past 21, whiskeys become kind of weird, and sometimes certain
So do
whiskeys.
people.
Yes, well,
Start
this is
voting
also true.
Republican. What's
But
kind of
whiskeys
weird?
like
Too true.
they like whiskeys that I love, like after 21, they start like going in a direction where it's like, oh, I don't like this. I actually like it younger.
Take that out of context.
Look, I don't. Look, I'm just saying.
Second quote on his tombstone.
I don't put anything in my mouth that's younger than 18. That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It holds true with people in Scotch. But
I can't wait to see your tombstone. It's going to be
It's gonna be
35
limited.
quotes.
Yeah.
It's just a rolling.
someone might
bunch of
possibly
tweets.
love him, and he liked it younger. Here lies Robert C. Cargill.
Yeah.
Robert C. Cargill.
Actually, you know,
What does C for? What does C stand for?
Chris.
Chris
Christopher.
Robert Cargill.
I,
Why not go by C. Cargill?
Well, I mean, I went to Judson here in Texas, which is the second largest at the time was the second largest high school in Texas. 3,200 kids went to this school, which was a high school, and
Yeah.
so there were 1,250 freshmen in my freshman year. And so what that meant was the group of misfits and outcasts that you'd have at any school that would be 3 or 4 kids strong. There were 30 of us.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was
You unionized.
Start a gang.
well, but that's the thing is that what was weird about it was, you know, it was normally you would be something of a social misfit at your high school
Yeah.
being into these certain things, but there were so many of us that we instead got properly socialized while being nerds. And so, but there were 4 kids in that group named Chris. And so people would be, you know, my close friends, the people who would take a bullet for me would be like, hey, Chris Cargill. Hey, Chris Rogers. Hey, Chris McCoy. Like they would just be, hey, Chris.
Yep.
And you hear your full name so often, you just get to the point where you're like, you know, dude, just call me Cargill. I'm come from a military family. Hearing the last name is fine. Just call me Cargill. And it stuck. And I got introduced to my wife that way. I got introduced to all my close friends that way. There's literally 3 people on the planet who aren't my parents who call me Chris because they remember meeting me early freshman year. And it just stuck.
Same way I got my name. Because there's so many
Yeah.
Mikes.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a Mike, a Mikey, a Michael, and a Mickey. So they're like, what's your last name? I said Burns. They go, we'll call you Bernie. I'm like, that'll never stick.
And here in
13
America,
years old on Bernie.
here in America, you can be Chris, you can be Christopher, or you can be really pretentious and go with Topher. And so that wasn't going to happen. I didn't find out until just a few years ago I could have been Kit. And I could have been Kit Cargill.
Kit
And I'm
Cargill's
like,
pretty good, dude.
That's a
Not
fucking
too late.
writer name.
Hashtag Kit Cargill. Bring
I
it
don't
back.
know, dude. There's so much gray in this beard. I think it's too late to.
No, sir.
There
Just
are
change it
Kit
on Twitter,
Cargill.
it'll take over.
there actually are a few British people in the author community who jokingly refer to me as Kit. In fact, I was just at a wedding of a writer, and he put Kit Cargill as my at my seat.
Never going to call you anything.
We actually have a
but Kit.
gentleman that works here in our art department. He's works in our blacksmithing department. Just a lot of different stuff. But
I love that you have a
Here, we have a
blacksmithing
it's
blacksmithing
really awesome.
department,
That's why I
yes.
mentioned it specifically. But his name is Kit Casati.
Did he make the forge? We
Yes.
have a whole custom made forge.
He made an item which
I don't know what to do with it,
pretty
but we
sure
should find something.
with a forge.
It's not OSHA
you
compliant.
forge rings and then you give them to everyone so you can control them. Like they wrote a whole series of books about it. You might have heard of them.
I want you to know that I just spent the last 30 seconds trying to imagine a cooler department than a blacksmith to brag about having, and I didn't. I couldn't beat
It's not
it.
an actual department. They just kind of have the tools there, but it's in a section of stage 2. So like I'm always pointing to it when we do tours, going, and that's where the blacksmithing forge is.
There's this is our blacksmithing forge, and the only thing cooler than that here is the puppy wrangling pit, where you can go and roll around with puppies before you go on the air.
It's officially a ranch that we have, Puppy Ranch. The but
Now
the-
that just sounds like something that would be in Las Vegas and involve prostitution.
one of the coolest things with Fringe Benefit is, and I totally took advantage of this, was they're also in that department super obsessive about sharpening things, sharpening knives. So I brought in some of my knives to have them sharpened, and now they're like, it's like having razor blades with handles in my house is what it's like. It's amazing.
I mean, is there a point where you get like too sharp?
It is. Because you know what's too sharp? When you cut yourself and don't feel it.
Yeah.
That's scary. And then all of a sudden you're just, where's all this blood coming from? It's like, oh, I cut my finger at some point.
You need
and
to
didn't
stop
realize
cutting
it.
yourself.
Yeah, I got 7 stitches in my finger.
Wait a minute. Are we both in the 7 Stitches Club?
Yeah, and I got on my index finger on my dominant hand.
I held a drone away from my kids.
I remember this.
And I said, hey, Bonnie, turn off this drone because I don't like the kids are getting too close to it, not realizing that drones, when they get shut off, go into landing mode. So as I held it, I watched lawnmower blades come in and just chop apart my. Yeah, if you go to Instagram.com/scamschoolbrian, scroll back to Christmas Eve of last year. It's a gnarly beast.
Why
right
did
there.
you? Why did you just fucking do that, Brian? I saw that. I have that image burned into my head, and somebody in the back room is bringing that up any second now.
You're goddamn right.
500,000 people are going to see your fucked up finger. That is not cool.
The
dude.
worst part was in the middle of all the chopping of my hand, it knocked some skin in there. So even after everything healed, like I guess when skin gets knocked in where skin doesn't belong, skin is getting nutrients, and skin's like, hey man, I guess I'm supposed to keep growing. I'm skin. And meanwhile, everything on the inside is just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Who the fuck are you? Who let you in? They're like, seal them up, boys.
This is our neighborhood.
And so then I had to get another, like, I don't know, I'm still doing scar management. I used to worry about having pretty hands and being a magician. I don't worry about that anymore.
Well, since you mentioned it,
I just heard that. I like
somebody
that.
in the back. Somebody in the back.
Wow.
Because you looked it up, right? You don't have to put it on screen.
Yeah, please don't.
There it is.
Oh, for the love of Christ, no.
Yeah, you know, the stitching is bad. The hard part for me was on my finger was when they cleaned it. That was rough. That was a rough time.
When I was in the ER, I'm of course of sound mind, and I'm saying like, "Hi, I'm a magician. I'm really worried about the range of motion on my hands and the sensitivity at the end of the fingers. If you could just let me know." And the response was like, "Oh no, your tenders are fine. Look."
Oh,
And that was a much.
it's so funny that you said that though, because when I went in for LASIK, that's what I said. I said, "Well, I'm thinking about doing one eye." And then coming in later and doing another eye. I said, because I'm a filmmaker and my eyes are very important to my work. Doctor said, let me let you in on a secret. Eyes are important to everybody's work. It's like you're not special because you work in film. You know, it's like, I need my hands for my magician work. It's like, well, lots of people need their hands to do their work, as it turns out. So,
Touché.
since you mentioned it, your social media presence, where can we find you guys?
Dude, at Schwood on Twitter. I'm fairly chatty right there. As a matter of fact, I tell people all the time, like my email box, I still have like 2,000 important and unread emails, and yet I respond to every single tweet. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. But definitely check out The Modern Rogue at youtube.com/Modern Rogue.
Filmed right here in Austin, Texas.
That's
typically.
right, and hopefully we're in the middle. I don't know. We got a few days to screw up the deal, but we're trying to buy 7.5 acres so we could build a Modern Rogue world headquarters.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And start.
You could have your own wizard tower.
Yes, that's exactly. That same drone that chopped up my hand went out, and I was like, "What's it gonna look like? 30 feet up? Yeah, all right, I could deal with this." So we'll see.
Cargo, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Massaworm, MASSAWYRM.
WYRM. It's funny. I remember this for after all these years because getting our movie reviewed by you was so important to us.
And literally, like, it was important to you, and I was a 25-year-old video store clerk. Like,
Yeah.
this is the world is just a weird fucking place, dude.
Well, we spent so much time. I always say the independent film world back then was you would spend a year making something, you'd make a movie, and then you try to get to an independent film festival, which essentially was the process of trying to convince about 6 people to let you show your movie to about 200 people.
The gatekeepers.
And that's how it worked. And it's like, and you just hope the right maybe one person out of the 200 who watched it in the theater, that would be the person who changes your life. And then while we were in the middle of that process, we started putting videos online. They started going everywhere. It's like, why are we doing this other thing? Let's just do this instead. But we haven't mentioned yet, Sea of Rust, you were nominated for a Clark Award.
The Arthur C. Clarke Award.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fun fact: first book nominated for the Arthur C. Clarke Award with the words "Robot Dong." Congratulations.
Also true. Yes. No, it's a very it was a passion project book. It was one that I pitched for years to people, and they were like, "Well, what's it about?" Well, it's a post-apocalyptic robot western.
Dude, no, you're telling it wrong. Let me tell you, as somebody who loves it, it's great. It's great. The robots won, and humans are irrelevant, and they're a far back, distant memory.
I can see it.
And it's people fighting over the bones of civilization. And you think of them as people, even though they're all artificially intelligent machines. I right before we went live, I confessed to Cargill that, a lot of books don't stick and kind of haunt me, but the world of Sea of Rust definitely does. Well deserved on the award nom.
Thank you, dude. Thank you.
And you have a new book coming out. We Are Where the Nightmares Go and Other Stories by C. Robert Cargill.
C. Robert Cargill.
See,
Not
it's
Robert
official.
C. Cargill.
We don't fuck around with
That seems
it.
backwards.
We don't fuck. No. That's the way it is. Pretty soon it'll just be Cargill. That's at this point in your life, you could just go straight to the one moniker.
Well, that's what people who know me call me, which is what's great, because that's how I can always tell, like in a business email or something, if I really know someone or not, because they'll be like, "Oh, Robert," and I'm like, "We've never met."
I'm going to out you on this. Cargill confessed that that's where the Beyonce joke in Doctor Strange came from.
That is exactly where that comes from.
Like that's some of his material. He's like, "Who are you? I'm Cargill." I'm like, "Oh, like Cher, Madonna, Cargill," and then that's how through
Happens
that
to me
moment that
all
showed up
the
in the
time.
movie.
Yeah, all the time. And we were trying to find something for Wong. And Wong in Marvel Comics is just called Wong. He has no last name. And so Scott and I were trying to find something that would really kind of work for him and could be funny because, you know, these are Marvel movies. They're family movies. They're supposed to be fun. As much as there's a lot of heavy stuff that goes on, you have to laugh. You have to have a good time. And so we're like, we need something here. And I was like, well, you know, I have this thing that happens to me all the fucking time. And I told Scott, and he about fell out of his chair. He's like, people really do that to you? I'm like, literally once a week. This happens where someone's like, oh, because you meet people and like, oh, hi, I'm Cargill. Oh, that's an interesting name. Cargill what? Oh, you just call me Cargill. Oh, what, like Cher? Oh, what, like Prince? And people, millions of times people have referred to me as the artist formerly known as Cargill. And so I thought that was, I thought that might work, and Scott just thought it was so fucking funny that it stuck. And so all the Beyonce stuff, all the stuff in Doctor Strange about that's just all about my name.
After writing Doctor Strange for the standalone movie, was it weird to see that character written by someone else for Infinity War?
Very, very. Like, seeing Doctor Strange wasn't so much. Seeing Wong, because Wong was a very personal character for me. I've always been a big fan of Wong. I'm a big fan of the Doctor Strange comic, and I have been since I was a kid. When I was 13, I daydreamed about getting to write a Doctor Strange movie and lived my whole life going, no one's ever going to let me do that. And so when
I never thought anyone would make a Doctor Strange movie, period.
I didn't either, but you know, they tried a couple of times. They had a TV movie. There was a attempt by Charles Band to make one. He lost the rights, renamed it. It's called Dr. Mordred. It's delightfully terrible. But so I get a call from Scott one night, and he's like, hey man, you know, there's a company that wants us to make a superhero movie. And I'm like, Scott, what superhero are we right for, honestly? And he goes, Doctor Strange. And I'm like, fuck, that's the one. I'm like, all right, I'm in. I'll do this. And but Wong was always a great.
So they said Iron Man, you've been like, fuck off.
Well, Iron Man, especially at that point, they had done so much with Iron Man. We weren't right for Iron Man. The type of story that we like to tell wasn't right for that. You know, writers kind of pick a niche and kind of have their thing that they do, not necessarily genre, but you know, Scott and I like doing terrifying things. We like dealing with, you know, big ideas. We like philosophy. We're both huge philosophy nerds. And so, you know, certain, like if they had called up and said, we want you to do a Batman movie, I'd be like, we're not right for Batman. Like, I love Batman, but I mean, the Batman story I'd want to write is not the type of thing you'd want to do. Like, Spider-Man, well, maybe if we played around with Mysterio and made it really creepy.
Which, by the way, I was amazed that Mysterio is going to be potentially the next villain.
We've been asking for that for 20 years. It's about time.
I've been asking not for that, but after them knocking it out of the park with the Vulture, the Vulture was the most cartoonish villain of all time, and all of a sudden, best villain in the history.
I'm still holding out for a great rendition of Mr. Mixoplick. That's the one that's
no.
Never.
So many of those like old like Silver Age, Golden Age villains are just like you can't touch them. But apparently, you know, honestly,
are you looking forward to the Batmite movie? Is that what's happening next?
Well, I always felt that way about the Joker. It's like if you can accept the Joker, who's basically an evil clown character, and he's a beloved villain. If you can suspend your disbelief that this like silly jokester villain clown character is evil and scary, then you should be able to suspend it for just about anything.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but the thing with Wong, what I found, going back to that initial question, the thing that I find so fascinating is that what's amazing about Wong is he's what grounds Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is this guy who spends all this time in this weird cartoonish world. Like he'll just go out and be gone for 7 minutes, and really he's been in this dimension for 2 years, and he comes back with this huge beard, and he's been dealing with nightmarish things in you know, worlds of non-Euclidean geometry, and there's Wong bringing him back, and he is the grounding the thing, grounding this character and bringing him back to humanity, and he's his connection. And so I've always been fascinated by this guy. So I was like, we have to get him right, and especially since he had such a complicated history, because he started out, as a manservant, and in an era where, hearkening back to, he had a Chinese manservant that's an acceptable part of storytelling, and now it's really not. And how do you correct that injustice and get the character right at the same time? And so that was like one of my big focuses. So being able to humanize him with that Wong element was a big thing.
All right, so I got a question, and you might have to recuse yourself on this, Cargill, because you may know something that I don't know.
I recuse myself of everything.
And everybody else may not even know what I'm talking about. But in an age where they managed to pull off the Avengers, where they managed to pull off Infinity War and all this stuff, is it possible that we could see the Secret Wars 2, Beyonder, trying to figure out what it means to be a human thing
the
happen?
first one, right?
Well, the first one was the Beyonder, like give me all your heroes
Come and
to
fight.
become, and go fight. But then Secret Wars 2 is like, I don't know, you guys seem cool. Let me try to be a human.
It's so weird.
It's
yeah.
so wonderful.
I can honestly say I've never heard the word Beyonder spoken anywhere near Marvel
I would
Studios.
love it so much.
Well,
It
they
would be
changed a
amazing.
lot of the stuff, the motivations in Infinity War. Like Thanos, they made him a little more mainstream. The Beyonder, I've heard that they want to try to do Secret Wars, but I think if they're going to do Secret Wars, they're going to do the one where they just put everyone together and they all fight.
They really did change the nature of Thanos in Infinity War, because originally his motivation was, I am in love with death.
Yep.
And I want to get her attention, and so I'm going to kill half the universe.
Yes.
And that is,
I thought they changed it, honestly, for an adaptation to a mainstream movie. I thought they did a great job. I think by the end of that movie, there's a lot of people who are sympathetic to Thanos and everything he goes through.
Well, he's the only character with an arc. He's the protagonist. He's the only one who
because
grows
it is
and has
his
a
movie.
journey.
That's the point. I mean, that when you get 38 characters from across, 18 different movies, of course you have to, there's not going to be a lot of character development in there. Anyone who has a complaint about character development in a crossover movie doesn't know what the fuck a crossover movie is and what the point is. The point is seeing them all together and doing what they do. And so Thanos is the one character that does get really great.
So I did have for the first time in maybe 30 years, Infinity War was the first movie I saw 3 times in the same week, the week it came out. And I loved it. And the first time, you can't control when you got to go pee, and you just sort of do your best guess and you leave, and then you come back, you're like,
you have no
what
control
did I
over
miss?
that?
I'd say some of us can control that.
Hey, well, okay, not if you're drinking compulsively, like one
We should hold out this
movie long.
podcast a little bit longer.
Yeah,
see what
exactly,
happens.
right? And then second time,
I think
it's
you're
like
going to need to replace that chair.
you definitely stick around for the parts you missed on the third one.
Yeah.
But the third time, when I was taking my kids, I realized, Captain America's on screen. Good time to go pee. Like, he does not have one good scene in that entire movie, and his shield is garbage, and there's no good writing in there.
Everything you said was wrong.
That's
I will agree that I wasn't a huge fan of the shield change. The two shields, nah. I missed his shield.
But also, he had no good. He felt extraneous, and he didn't have any good lines. And he's a great character. He's the heart of the Avengers and of the Marvel.
I'm going to prove you
franchise.
wrong
He's gonna
right
get the
here.
shield
Okay, go for
I'm going to prove you wrong right here.
it. That shield is dumb. It's a dumb shield.
I am Groot. I am Steve Rogers.
that was a
Fuck
lovely
you.
line.
I win.
Okay, no.
Mic
That
drop.
it was so genuine and
cute.
heartfelt and just very polite.
Yeah.
It
That was it was so it was
Also,
so
the Thor beard moment was nice too.
yes.
Yeah.
No, there are great moments. I think the moment between
You
him
guys
and
don't
Natasha,
understand how satisfying this leak I took, though. I mean, it was really good.
All right. Well, in that sense, yeah, Captain
I'm
America was
glad, I'm
terrible.
glad the leak was amazing, but fucking Steve Rogers rocks.
I will say though, Infinity War, going back to what you were saying, my favorite line in the whole thing is a Wong line, and he doesn't have that many. But it's like right at the beginning. It's a really great scene at the beginning when they're in the. Am I gonna get this wrong? The Sanctum.
Yeah.
Sanctum Sanctorum.
Yeah.
My favorite typo of all time that I've dealt with is one time Scott sent me a draft that said the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Santorum.
And so
There's two very different interpretations.
that's exactly what happened in my head. Was I was like, oh, this is where Rick Santorum hangs out, and then it's like, oh wait, no,
There's
this
that
is
other
the
meaning.
thing.
But Wong's line is great when they're coming down the stairs, and it just seems like
The
it almost
tuna
seems like
melt?
they're playing with the manservant thing a little bit because Strange is gonna go out and get him food, And he just says very matter of factly, I wouldn't say no to a tuna melt. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I connected with that line just somehow. It's like, I love this character. And also I love that, not spoil anything in Infinity War, but there's a moment where Wong's like, yeah, I'm out. And he's just like, I'm fucking off. I can't do anything about this, so I'm going to go back and just watch The Sanctum because that's my job.
He might as well have said, have you seen how many characters there are in this movie? There's no room for me.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for coming on the podcast for Memorial
Absolutely,
Day.
man.
Any big plans for Memorial Day?
We
Which
did
is today.
Did just today?
Hey, I
Besides
got
being on our podcast?
today we did a cookout on the Modern Rogue. We melted a pig's body.
What?
Yeah, you've seen Breaking Bad. We wanted to test to see if that's possible.
With acid?
Like,
Or
No,
heat?
acids are more tightly regulated, but it turns out lye is pretty regularly acceptable. But also don't use an aluminum pot because it generates a bunch of hydrogen gas that explodes.
I guess people should go see that.
Why do you always have to break things?
It's because we're not good. We're not smart. People all the time are
Sounds like you
like
weaponized a pig.
People are always like you guys don't know anything, and you're like, yeah, that's the point. We're trying to figure it out. We're not saying we're experts. We're trying to become experts, and so
and it scares me sometimes because you're the guys that I drink with. I feel like at some point one of you is going to die with your final words being, "Hey, Cargill, watch this."
I'm okay with that. Put that. Say, I'll have a much smaller tombstone next to yours.
It won't have as many name-dropping epitaphs, but
You're gonna have a here, hold my hydrogen moment.
Yes,
And then you'll be dead.
exactly.
Well, it's funny though when you say that because like science channels on the internet, you do think when you watch them, this person knows everything. But scientists are just a bunch of people who don't know something, but they have a good feeling about something, so they're gonna give it a shot and try.
Well,
to
and
figure it out.
unfortunately, all the scientists, they don't have to deal with commenters. They're like, you guys should have watched this other channel. I'm like, yeah, those guys know what they're doing. Fuck off.
I did a clip for my vlog. I'm learning to be a pilot. I'm getting certified as a pilot, and the aviation school when they found out I was gonna film, they're like, man, if you put anything regarding aviation online, it's just going to be like, you're going to have a bunch of armchair pilots telling you how you got everything wrong, everything like that. So I like made that whole section of it just silent and just stayed away from it. But that's just the nature of the beast. Going all the way back to talkbackers on Ain't It Cool News.
oh god,
I mean, that's the we built a PC, and of course, everybody had their thing that they were like, oh, so much cringe.
No.
We shot a gun. So much cringe. Everything's
you're not
wrong.
supposed to shoot it this way, motherfucker. Like seriously, you were
No, no,
trying to.
it's called
you're like,
the
I'm
double
gonna be
inverted
like
twist
I'm in
TV.
a music video.
Yeah.
All right, Cargo, where can people get the book and when will they be able to get it?
Oh, June 12th is Where the Nightmares Go. It comes out. Sea of Rust is out now wherever you buy books, in audio or in ebook or physical book. And I will be on tour with it. I'm going to be here in Austin June 11th. Then
that's not a lot of a tour. That's like.
well, that's the beginning.
You kind of stopped him in the middle of the discussion.
No, it's not much of a tour. And then I'm going to Boston, and I'll be doing a reading with
That's a
Joe
tour.
Hill. And then I will be that weekend. Next weekend I'll be at Denver Comic Con. So if you're in Denver, I'll be around all weekend with my podcast and talking movies. And then the week after that, I'm going to be at Cinepocalypse in Chicago, where me and Scott Derrickson will be the co-presidents of the board of Cinepocalypse, and we'll be showing a lot of very cool movies, some of which I've seen on the circuit this year, and lots of really, really great indie horror and action that's going to be played there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then I get to come back home. But yeah, so I'm
Always
going to
the best
be,
part.
so you can catch me on the road in any of those cities, and yeah.
All right, well, we want to thank our guests, Massa Worm and Schwood, for joining us here on the Receipt
Schwoody!
Podcast.
It does sound like a morning radio team.
Massive Worm and Schwood.
Special Memorial Day podcast. And stick around for the post show if you're a first member, where Ashley will be telling me how she's going to support me for a year financially while I go pursue some dream.
Nice.
I got this.
Bye, everybody.